Especially the young people. What if I could, if I had the authority to do it, what if I could offer you and say, look, we're not doing such a good job in government these days. We make promises and we don't know about the future. But would you consider opting out of the whole system under one condition? You pay 10% of your income, but you take care of yourself. Don't ask the government for anything.
There he goes, fighting the fight at 40 past the hour. Joining us now from Texas, Republican congressman from that state and winner of the CPAC straw poll for the second straight year, Representative Ron Paul. And also with us in New York, editorial writer for the Washington Post and MSNBC contributor Jonathan Capehart.
Jonathan Capehart, of course, finished in the top 5.
Right.
CPAC voting, because you didn't know I was a conservative.
No, what a great pairing.
Let's go to Congressman Ron Paul first. And I want to talk about CPAC and congratulations on the victory, but let's talk about the order of business in importance. And I know you'll agree with me that most important is the fact that other than your son Rand Paul and Paul Ryan on good days and a few others, nobody in Washington is yet talking seriously about cutting spending, about Pentagon spending, entitlement spending, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Congressman, what's it going to take for Washington to get serious?
Well, I think you have the right point there. Of course, I voted against all the budgets and all the appropriation bills for the 20-some years I've been there. But I've never expected them to get serious, and I don't expect them now to be serious. I use the analogy of addiction. You know, I think the treatment is wrong. I mean, the problem is there, and that is they spend too much and the deficit's too big. But they're treating this alcoholism like we're going to taper off. I think what we're going to do is have you gradually reduce the amount of drinking that you're going to do each day. And everybody knows that doesn't work. It doesn't work in politics either. You can't nibble away and say, well, we're going to cut a little food stamps here, a little Social Security here, a little foreign aid here. So I don't expect that to work. And I think the addiction is so bad that we're going to continue, and we are going to have a major economic crisis with the destruction of the dollar. You just can't keep these deficits going and printing the money. And I think it's too painful for the politicians. They don't want to take the heat. So even though the noise is getting louder and the Tea Party movement is there and demanding these cuts, even some people in the Tea Party movement, they don't want you to touch Social Security. They don't want you to touch anything other than Obamacare. Well, but do they want you to touch the medical care that
right? I want to bring that up.
They don't like the deficit. They don't like the deficits, and they'd like to see them cut, but they're not quite willing. I mean, some of them are real Republican, and they wouldn't dare attack Bush's increase in medical care costs. You know, prescription health program. So it's they treat the symptoms and they don't look at it philosophically and knowing that we have to deal with the role of government, and that's a much bigger, broader problem. And that's why I think the young people are willing to look at it. The people I'm talking to are willing to look at the whole philosophy of it.
Well, one of the things that surprised me looking at the coverage of CPAC this weekend, we had your son on last week, and he's one of the only people that's actually out there that has the guts to tell the truth. You raised him well about the deficit, about entitlement programs, about cuts in Pentagon spending. This weekend at CPAC, when he talked about cutting Pentagon spending and entitlement spending, there were actually like boos at CPAC. And I keep wondering where these freshman Republicans are that are supposedly Tea Party members, influenced by Tea Party members, and yet they won't talk about Pentagon spending or entitlement spending. I'm starting to wonder if our side, the Republican side, is going to get it wrong again.
Well, you know, John, I think what we have a problem here is with the semantics, because they have conditioned us all to use the word defense spending. Who wants to cut defense? I don't want to cut defense. I want a stronger defense. But they equate defense spending with militarism. I want to cut the militarism, the military-industrial complex, the interventionism, the stuff that hurts us, that makes us more vulnerable. So if we separate defense from militarism, maybe more people would be willing to accept it. But who wants to be on record for saying, oh, I just voted against the defense budget? But if you said, oh, I just voted against militarism and for support support for people like Mubarak, you know, the people who we've supported, the dictators around the world, people say, hey, why do we do those kind of things? Oh, it's in national defense. So I think it's a perception and a semantics problem that we have to try to re-educate the people to understand what we're talking about.
Aren't we at a moment, Joe, though, with the budget, or Mark Halperin, where both sides are sort of taking a moment to put out just a little bit and then a little bit more? I mean, isn't there some political football?
The fact is they're only nibbling at 12% of the budget right now.
They're not even close.
This is not a serious conversation. It's embarrassing. I wonder, Congressman, what your response is to what Donald Trump said. Do you think you can be elected president?
Well, you always take that risk when you put your name on the ballot. You know, you could get elected, but you know, the other thing is that's what they told me years ago. Because Joe, you've known me long enough that I've said the same things and voted this same way for many years. And they told me that when I first started running for Congress. There's no way you can run on that platform and run. You're just sort of obsessed with this Constitution, you know, and you live in the dark ages. You can't be elected. So I was elected 11 times, and somebody said, well, how many times has Donald Trump been elected? Does he have really the right to go and criticize others and saying they're unelected?
Yeah.
So
and by the way, the second time he ran to get into Congress, Mark Halperin, you remember that I do. And you can see coming a mile away, the entire Republican establishment lined up against him. They also lined up against me in '94, but they lined up against him. They tried to kill him politically, and he won. He won
in his district. But, Congressman, I want to ask you, could you win nationally? Again, do your views have a majority of support in the United States of America that would allow you to get elected president? If you were the Republican nominee, could you beat Barack Obama?
Yeah. The reality is it would be very, very difficult. But I think the difficulty is more in getting Republicans to believe in small government. But if you look at the polls, and there aren't that many, my appeal is to a lot of independents and a lot of progressive Democrats who are sick and tired of Obama for, you know, opting out of cutting back on some of this militarism. He's a warmonger. He's expanding the war. So my support comes much broader. So my numbers would be much bigger running against Obama than they will be running against some conservative in the Republican primary. But the big thing is the numbers are growing. Even though I'm a pessimist on the short run, on the long run I'm optimistic, because there's a new generation coming, and they say this is an idea whose time has come. We need to be talking about what liberty really can offer to us in the foreign policy arena, in personal liberties, and then also, which conservatives all agree with, on the economic policies. So no, I think on a broad base, and when you look at the entire population, my numbers are much better.
Hey, Jonathan Capehart, you do have progressive Democrats that disappointed in the president for tripling the number of troops in Afghanistan, extending that war possibly another decade. That's what his generals want to do. We spend over $2 billion a week in this war. It seems to me that this issue is an issue that could have resonance in 2012.
Well, of course it can, because if the president's